Okay, hello world. It's been a long time since I had a guest here on Humans Having Discourse. Today we are graced by Shravaniya Deepekararo. Did I say your name right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, excellent. So I met Shravaniya here in Hong Kong just a couple weeks ago at Krishna Janmastami, a big festival here. We instantly hit it off talking about the so-called pandemic. And I thought we could have a great chat, and she can tell us all about her work. And but first, anything you'd like to say to introduce yourself?
Me? I guess my name is Shravaniya, which rhymes with Mamma Mia, so it's not that hard to pronounce. And Shravaniya Di Pecoraro, and I'm a initiated disciple of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. I took initiation in 1971. I started studying yoga in 1969 in St. Louis, Missouri. So, so let's see. And I took off going to different ISKCON temples all over the place. I don't know what you want me to describe.
That's fine for yeah, just basic intro to start, I'm mostly curious how you ended up here in Asia. I think a lot of people are curious about that. I have my own curious story about it. So I know we talked a little bit about it. Did you first came to Taiwan? Is that right?
No, actually, okay. Right, when I was in Detroit, I was pushed into an arranged marriage when I was 19 years old. And that lasted 2 years, and he renounced me in New York. So when he renounced me, I told the temple president, I'm leaving. And he said, where are you going? And I said, Juhu, I'm going to Bombay. So I went to Bombay because I had met Palika, Srila Prabhupada's cook. And we hit it off really good. And so I went to stay in Juhu for a while. Prabhupada was there. And Kaushalya Dasi took me over to Jaipur and to the Krishna Balaram Mandir. We were there on opening, way back then, 1973 or 74. And what else? Let's see. So that's that. And then I was in Juhu, and I had to. It was the temple president of Hong Kong wanted to leave. Panchavita Swami wanted to go and do something else. So I met a new partner, and that husband was asked to go to Hong Kong. So I went with him. And I loved it. I loved Hong Kong. It was great. Stayed for a couple of years. And then went back to the States. But I was so attached and attracted to Hong Kong and China that I learned Mandarin in New York City. So I took the course in Mandarin and ended up back in Taiwan in 1983 and stayed for 6 years and then came to Hong Kong after that. And in the meantime, so it went like that. We could temple.
Cool. Yeah, I had the same kind of attraction and attachment coming here to Chinese culture, Chinese language. It's actually kind of hard to get away from it now that I've been here a while. And so I noticed you're also an author. You've written a bunch of books. You do other courses, and you're an astrologer, so you do readings too, right?
Yeah, I learned astrology by myself over here because I got divorced in 1986, and I moved back to Hong Kong by myself in '89. No friends, no family. I'm here alone, so I started to connect to my guidance, and tarot cards. I didn't believe in tarot cards. I believed in astrology because that's mathematics. But somebody did a reading for me. I said, "How do you know that?" And she says, "It's in the book." I said, "Can I borrow that book?" And I borrowed her cards and borrowed the book. And I read for myself tarot every single day. And it helped a lot because I was working. I was teaching yoga and working for myself. And things were very, very moved forward and progressed nicely. But I did readings for myself, and I did readings for friends. And when the friends introduced their friends, okay, all right, charge a little money for that. So that was how it got started. It just naturally fell in my lap in 1992. So I've been doing professional readings since '92 and studying. And what I find interesting is that the astrology, it actually demonstrates what you find in the Vedic teachings.
What do you mean by that exactly?
It shows that there are higher powers, and it tells you more about them, and it shows how it affects our lives. Because there's a law of nature. There's laws of nature, and if you break the laws, then that's called sinful activity. Nobody uses that word anymore, but that's the cause of trauma. Now people talk about trauma and about healing. Well, yeah, but what is the disease? What's the problem? Breaking the laws of nature. So astrology shows how those laws show up in our individual lives. They show the natural tendency of this lifetime that an individual has. And I find this very, very important. Because in astrology, you can find out if something difficult is happening in a difficult time. You can find out what is the meaning of the time, what is the lesson, and how long will it last. You can find out how long it's going to last. And it's just so exact. So I just find that very helpful for helping others make decisions themselves. Help me make my decisions.
Interesting. As for me with astrology, I'm still not sure about the whole thing, but I've gotten a few readings, and I guess I've gotten 2 readings. One was years ago in Vermont. A friend of mine got into it. He became very obsessed with it, and he said, "Come on, let me do a reading for you." I said, "Sure." And
were you guys straight when you did this?
Wavy.
Okay.
Maybe not completely straight, but it was a good reading though. Like there was a few things in there where I was like, whoa, that kind of like struck a chord. Mm-hmm. But not much else though. It was kind of like more like confirmation than anything else. And then I did that was like a Western zodiac kind of reading. Mm-hmm. And then I got a Vedic astrology reading in China just 2 years ago. I sent my birth information to Thakur Prabhu and his wife, who lives in Houston. You may know her, Kalindi. She does, yeah, she's into astrology too. And so she gave me back this, massive report, maybe 100 pages of stuff. And so that's kind of had the opposite effect on me, where it's like too much, so I'm not sure what to do with it. But yeah, it's definitely fascinating. I think one thing that maybe not turns people off or kind of agitates skepticism is the degree of exactness we can get in astrology. So you said a few moments ago that like astrology can show us like the trends of our life and where we're going. I think that's true. I think that's where astrology can work really well. Whereas a skeptic might say, "Oh, those astrologers, they tell you you're going to have $2.2 million when you're exactly 47 years old. Oh, they can't possibly know this sort of stuff. And I think that's where the straw man comes in, of like, of making it, portraying it as something which it is not. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it depends on what the astrologer focuses on. I've had people come to me and ask me, when will I get married and how many kids will I have? And I don't predict that kind of stuff. That's up to you, you know. Or when am I going to die? I don't focus on this kind of stuff. I focus on what you're intending to do and what you need to do to achieve that, or relationship tendencies, how the dynamic is, what's the problem, how to fix it, this kind of stuff. I'm more into Western psychological astrology. I've read, one of my favorites is Stephen Arroyo. He's my favorite. Next favorite is Liz Green. They're really good at interpreting these sorts of things. So that's what I focus on, is how to help the individual make decisions.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
So does that mean you also use the Western zodiac, like the 12 signs?
Yes, yes.
Okay, interesting. So have you ever tried the Vedic system?
Yeah, I had Nalini Kanta, my godbrother. He did a chart for both my sons, and he was very accurate.
Nice. One thing is what the takeaway from my Vedic reading, now it's coming back to mind. Rahu. I have a big presence of Rahu in my chart, and that actually like made a lot of sense. And it still keeps like, because I've always been like an outsider, and I think the way I saw it on the chart, I was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about your books. I have your website open here so people can see. Do you see the?
Yes.
Okay, so we're at barefootphilosopher.press.
Yeah.
And yeah, I noticed you have this book, Basic Bhagavad Gita. So is this like a translation of the Gita or a guide to it? What is this exactly?
This is a study guide, and that is actually the second edition. First edition we published in 2004, and I self-published this. This one is done by KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing through Amazon, and that makes it very easy to get. And so about this Basic Bhagavad Gita is kind of like the thumbnail, what you need to know before you get started studying. It helps explain it to someone who has no background in it. And,
excellent.
And my students who I taught Bhagavad Gita courses to find it very useful, very helpful.
Yeah, I think this is a great service. It's definitely something I would say is essential for many people. As for myself, I've always been into ancient texts. So when I first found the Bhagavad Gita as it is, I just consumed it in its entirety. I couldn't get enough of it, actually. But for even my friends who are, my age, went to the same schools I did, and they're interested in it, and then they, sometimes they'll start to read it and they just get thrown off by how foreign or exotic or ancient, and it's just hard to get into it.
What is the problem is after 3 Sanskrit words, the brain shuts off. 3 Sanskrit words, and I don't know what we're talking about here, So I use English expressions, and I'll put the Sanskrit in a bracket so that they can know what that means. Because Sanskrit terminology, I love it. It is very specific descriptions of metaphysical levels of life, which you don't find. Everything else you find in other places is so vague, but the Vedic descriptions, they have specific words for things.
Would you say that Sanskrit is similar to Chinese in that way?
I don't know too much about Chinese. I mean, I speak a little bit, but ancient Chinese, I'm not sure.
Yeah, as far as ancient Chinese, I don't know, but as far as the characters in daily use, I do think there's something similar there, where there's an incredible level of depth in the Chinese characters, and
A
then
lot of meaning. Well,
yeah,
but what I'm referring to is the Sanskrit terminology for functions and levels of metaphysical experience and reality.
yes, that's where Sanskrit is best, of course. Consciousness, metaphysics,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I try to bring that to the attention of the students so they can see what's going on those subtle levels.
Excellent. So here are a few more books. Can you talk about these?
Alchemy and Gemstones is the planets and you. This is a lecture I gave at the Hong Kong City Hall back in 2001. I gave a lecture to a group of people there who were very interested in it. I recorded the lecture and then I transcribed it, and then I add another section where I describe things in more detail. And I give Vedic references, and I give references to other writers who are well known. So it gives tells you what vibration the different gems are and how they relate to the planets. And so you can kind of get an idea of vibration frequency.
Is this how astrology can be effective? Is the vibrations from different planets and stars in and our own vibration and the connection there? Is that part of it?
That's true. You know how we understand that there are different gods and different planets. When the gods influence your life, they don't come in front of you with a sword and a shield and threaten you. You know, when the gods influence your life, they do it through your subtle body, your mind. They do it through that, and that's what the planetary influences are. Everything is matter and spirit. Spirit is the thing that takes action through the material energy. Matter can't work by itself. You know.
Yes. Yes.
A machine will not run if somebody doesn't touch the button and turn it on. You know, it won't run. So
Yes.
versus like that.
We'll definitely talk more about the subtle body. Alchemy is really interesting. That's a rabbit hole I haven't gone into yet. Ancient teachings, modern perspectives. What kind of subjects do you go through here?
Oh, those are my observations when I was a yoga teacher, and these are just essays that I wrote about different subjects. Like I have one article in there, Caring Carnivores. You know, it's about being vegetarian or not, how important it is, and this idea that it's not important. You could eat meat and still be a really spiritual person, you know, but not according to Bhagavad Gita. That's tamaguna, and that's not the level of sanity. So anyway, but I do it in a very light-hearted manner, and I also have a friend of mine, Barbara Dudman, who is an activist for animal rights, and so she wrote something in there as well. So I included that. It's interesting. It just makes you think. I don't try to tell people what to think. I try to tell them what I think and give them some references, and then they can figure out what it is they think. And according to the references, which are Vedic, does my does my viewpoint correlate with this, or how is it different? It starts the wheels moving. Because it's important. We are responsible for what we do. We have to face it. So we need to have information so we can make good choices, not just be dragged around by our senses.
Yeah, if the way I see it is like if I'm going to be dragged around by something, let it at least be a higher something and not my little animal senses.
Yeah, I've observed that the senses are like bosses that are never satisfied and never give you a day off. They're unrelenting bosses, that masters that tell you what to do, and they're never happy with what you did, and they want more, and they never give you a day off. That's what the senses are like.
That's a good analogy. They are definitely never satisfied. That's for sure.
They always want more. If you get what you want more. If you don't get what you want, you get angry. So lust, anger, and greed are all tied at the hip. They're all tied at the hip.
What would you say to someone who says, well, I will just fulfill all my desires and then I won't have any karma anymore?
Oh, okay. So you're posing a question. Well, you have to be satisfied with enough. You have to be satisfied with enough is enough. But if you do it in cooperation with the Supreme Spirit, God, and you say, I have these desires, but I want to do it your way. I want to do it in a way that is pleasing you. So if you like, you can grant me, and I'll just accept whatever you decide. And he does that. In fact, I personally experienced that once in a while you have a desire that won't go away. It won't go away, and it won't go away, and you have to do it. And I found out that is God wants you to do that. This is what he wants you to do. It's not about gratifying some sexual urge, something higher than that. It's something in you that won't go away. That is your destiny. To figure out how to do that in line with the laws of nature and nature's God.
I agree. And, hearing you say it sparks in my consciousness those things specifically that I just can't get away from in a good way, like teaching. And another thing I'm kind of obsessed about is judo, actually. And
that it's required, because sometimes these miscreants that not sometimes, all the time, they won't stop till they get knocked down, handcuffs put on, thrown in the paddy wagon. They won't stop. You can't reason with them. You can't, talk them out of it. You got to just stop them physically. So judo is good. You.
Wow, excellent. Thank you. I'll tell a quick story about judo. The last time I did judo was in New Zealand. I met a black belt just staying at the hostel where I was, and I said, "Hey, let's go spar. Let's go find a spot on the ground." And we did, just right outside the hotel. We gathered quite an audience.
I bet you.
Yeah.
What was going on?
And that was my first time doing judo on the grass, which I thought would be nice because it's kind of soft, but it's not. It's pretty hard.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah, and we were both pretty bruised up and didn't want to walk at all the next day. But the funny thing that happened was that night I couldn't sleep. My mind was so bewildered by, oh, how can I counter that move? How can I do this? And it just, sparked this thing inside me that just like was good. It's a higher thing, like what you're talking about, of constantly, how to maintain the flow state and effectively. how to improve in that state, and it's just like overwhelming for me and positive, and it's unfortunate it's hard to practice. You need a dojo, you need a partner, same body type. So hopefully I'll figure that out soon.
Mm.
So here are two more books, Karma and Reincarnation. That seems self-explanatory.
That one, that was a talk that I gave in Hong Kong, probably in 2016, and I transcribed it into a book, and we're going to have it translated into Chinese. We have a translator, and we expect to have it ready by Chinese New Year next year.
Excellent, great. And the basic yoga sutras, that looks interesting to me. Is that connected to Patanjali?
Yes, it is. But this is the Ashtanga yoga system, and it focuses on the yamas and niyamas. This, K. Patabi Joyce, who was the founder of the movement of Vinyasa, Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga, he said, yoga is an inner practice. The rest is just a circus. And the inner practice is something that is just left out. It's just not taught. They touch on it and then they go on to something else. Because the inner practice is so different from our culture now, the popular culture now. It's almost antithetical to it. Because the popular culture now is you are this body and joy, but the yoga culture is I'm spirit, I'm not this body. And so there's different reason to do different things. So yama niyama are the 10 commandments of yoga, basically. And the Ashtanga system starts yama niyama asana. Asana is third. Pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Some more Sanskrit words, but the yama niyama comes before asana. It's the inner practice. So it's ethics and morality. And I explain in very easy terms why that makes sense. And what happens if you do the opposite? There's trouble, the kind of trouble that is caused by it. So it really makes you think that maybe this is worth doing. So I Basic Yoga Sutras, it's not for scholars, it's for everyday people, written in their own language.
Cool, and it focuses more on the inner side of things.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. But it does cover all the 8 limbs of yoga. Just explains them, but the main important thing is controlling your mind and body. If I'm the spirit within. If I control my own mind and body, that is character. If I try to control someone else's mind and body, that is evil. That's the definition of evil. I'm trying to control your mind and body. Unless they happen to be your child, then that's for their own benefit, because they don't know what to do. You see the difference?
Totally, yeah. I love ethics. That's one of my focuses. And yeah, especially in recent times, I've been thinking much more about evil and what evil really means. So the loose definition I use now is like evil is pushing your vice onto someone else. So if someone is like they're trying to control their body, their mind, and they just kind of not very good at it, they make a mistake and they go, oh man, that sucks. I think that's not evil. That may be bad, but it's not evil. But if someone says, oh, what I'm doing is bad and you need to start doing it too because that's good, that's where the whole world is inverted, and that's evil.
And wicked is even worse. Wicked is wanting to see someone else suffer and laughing at it. That's good. Seduce someone to do things that are bad for them, knowing that they're bad for them, but they don't know. That's really wicked.
Yeah, yeah. That word wicked is like, it's funny, like the what it stands for is worse, but I think in English we hear the word evil and we immediately, at least I think of like concentration camps and like death chambers. Like I typically jump right to like the worst possible thing. But I think there can be small evils, tolerable evils, big evils, insidious evils, in your face evils.
That's what cowardice is. You tolerate something that should not be tolerated.
Yeah, yeah. So you've also got some audio
Yeah.
things here on your site. I haven't listened to these yet, but they're all free, right?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else you want to mention?
Um, well, I did some courses, which were Yoga Alliance certified courses. And I gave out certificates to the participants. It was a study, guided study courses, and they went through Bhagavad Gita and they went through Yoga Sutras. We haven't done Srimad Bhagavatam yet, but I've got a book that I've already written, and we're going to publish it next month. It's about some excellent stories from the Bhagavad Purana, which are dramatized. They're written in such a way that it's very dramatic. And I followed the Bhagavatam as much as possible. And then I have, but I had to put some expressions and some gestures and things like that to make it come to life. I used to write scripts for performances. We performed for Prabhupada before, like into Players in New York. And these are very moving. There's a lot of lessons and teaching you can get from them. And so that's what's coming up.
Excellent.
You're showing the thing about tarot, scary tarot cards. There's a recording, and there's an audio there. If you click on it, then you can listen to me talk about it. How these scary tarot cards are not really scary, and I tell you what they mean. Yeah, there's the.
This looks like a coaching program you do for life path, finding a life path.
Life path is what I called my astrological readings.
Ah, okay.
I do numerology, astrology, and tarot to answer their questions of things that they're concerned with. And I have a blog where some of my things are written.
Excellent. Cool. All right. So that is Shravaniya Di Pecoraro. That's Italian name, right?
Pecoraro means shepherd.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful name.
Yeah, that's what it means. And not a shepherd who eats the sheep. Okay, a shepherd who takes care of the sheep because they don't know which way to go. So the shepherd guides them. Stay away from danger. Here's where you go.
That's a tough job, but someone's got to do it. So let's talk about the soul. This is the main reason I wanted to talk with you. You mentioned you were researching, especially the subtle body and kind of the mechanics of that. So first of all, I think this is a tricky question, but I'm wondering how you would define the soul. What is the soul?
How I would define it, according to Vedic Bhagavad Gita. So the spirit, Atma, spirit self, right? But what we are encountering here in the material world is conditioned souls. What does that mean? Spirit is spiritual energy. It's eternal. It's conscious. It's full of knowledge and bliss. Okay? It's a person, and the eternal spirit is covered by material energy in a subtle form. So a spirit's covered by a subtle body, and whatever he sees through the lens of that covering. And that covering is conditioned by three modes of material nature. And it is impressed with, it has the impressions of his past karma, which is called vasanas, the impressions. So when we're talking about a soul, I would point out that there's two levels, spirit and the covering. Now, sometimes they call the covering a soul, sometimes they call the covering psyche. Sometimes they call it chitta. In Sanskrit, it's called chitta. All right, and that covering has waves created by different things, and those waves are called vrittis. So the first sutra, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga means to stop the waves in the chitta, the covering, stop the waves. Right? That's what it says. When the living entity, the spirit, identifies with this covering, and it's almost like a virtual reality, like a video game or something. Oh, I won, yay! No, I lost. And it's all happening in the subtle covering in the gross body, in the field of matter. So the spirit, I call it spirit, and in the Bhagavad Gita it's called Atma, self. Jivatma. Jivatma, Jiva means alive, right? But Jiva means the individual living entities. Paramatma means higher living entity, the higher self and the individual small selves. So there are different categories of spiritual, in the spiritual plane. However, what we find when we get off the beaten path here on the Earth planet is anything that's invisible they call spiritual. But I have a problem with that. Okay, that is too vague. There's a lot of metaphysical, invisible material existence around us. It's not spiritual. Okay, just because you can't see it doesn't make it spiritual. So, we're going to talk about this subject. When we say spiritual, we mean on the position of the eternal living beings. We don't mean the subtle body. Now, subtle body, that is the thing that you have to understand better. The other day I was inside, and there was Typhoon 8. Remember that typhoon? And the windows were rattling, and the rain was pitter-pattering, and the wind was blowing, and I was inside, and it wasn't affecting me because I was sheltered inside. And I said, isn't this kind of like what happens in your mind when you get upset? There's a storm that's going on, happening, but that's not really touching you. But you know it's there, and you could open the curtains and watch it, but actually it's not affecting me, and that's just how the mind is. There's an upset, emotional thing happening, the argument, storm, whatever, and it happens over there in the subtle body. And to become self-realized means to know that that's not me. I'm not my mind, and I'm not my body. Now, when I was in the temple, I used to hear all the time, you're not this body, you're not this body. Yeah, not this mind either. Hello. You're not this mind either. That needs to be understood. So how can I identify myself, and how can I identify what's going on in the mind, and how do I deal with it? Well, that's in Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. And the Yoga Sutras talk about how to deal with it also.
Right. So the Yoga Sutras, it seems, are really dialed in towards that kind of filtering metaphor you used of uh, like cleaning the filter around the soul, so that instead of, well, first of all, instead of attaching ourselves to this material subtle body covering, we first detach, and then we clean it so we can see through it. And when we see through it,
That's
then we're
what niyama is all about. It's cleaning it. Yama niyama is for cleaning that lens. So you come to the platform of goodness, and then you can see things as they are. But that's not the complete thing with yoga. All right. Uh, the yamas and niyamas end with Ishvara Pranidhan. Ishvara Pranidhan, surrender to God, surrender to the Supreme Controller. That is the last niyama. It's not just one thing you could try, it's the main thing. Let's just imagine you buy a ticket, you get your bags packed, you get to the airport on time, you're sitting in the lounge, and you don't get on the plane. You don't leave. What if you don't get on the plane? What are you doing all that for? So my point is that if you don't do Ishvara Pranidhan, what are you doing yoga for? It's like you're sitting in the airport and you don't go anywhere. The whole thing is to bring you to understand the higher self. You have a relationship with him, an eternal, loving relationship. And that's what Prabhupada taught us. And this needs to be understood. But you can understand this, you need two things. You've got to come to goodness, okay? And you have to want it enough that you get invited. The spiritual master finds you. I was 18 years old, and I was listening to Ram Dass. Ram Dass was saying how you have to have your guru, you have to have a guru. And I said, how am I going to get a guru? I can't go to India. I'm sitting in St. Louis on my sofa. I can't go to India. How am I going to find my guru? My guru found me. You know, he came to Boston, and he came to New York, and he gave me initiation from London by post. You know, got initiated by post. It was great. So the spiritual master, he told us, go find more, share this. He called it preaching. Share this. So that's our job. And so when I write books, I'm sharing in a way that they can understand, so that and I point them to, there's more with Prabhupada's books, this one, that one. And it's all online. You don't even have to buy books. You just go to a database or Prabhupada.io, and everything is there. All you got to do is just learn how to use it. Find anything you want.
That is the beauty and the curse of the internet, I think, because it's all so thoroughly free and available, and there's so much of it. The skill these days is actually not only finding the right sources, but knowing when to really stick with it to the end.
Yeah.
And most people, especially in the West, are just dabbling. They're dabbling for most of their lives, and then they try again the next lifetime.
See this? That works. See this? He's describing this. Remember, even Lord Jesus Christ, when he would heal somebody, in the Bible, every time he healed somebody, afterward he said to that person, now don't sin again. In other words, don't make the same mistake you made that got you all messed up like this. Don't mess it up again. Jesus said, don't sin again. I don't hear that very often, you know, when I hear talk about Jesus. But he made the point. Don't do that again.
One thing took me off guard, not off guard, I don't know what the right word is. Just something that jumped out in the first definition you gave of the soul is that the soul is a person. So I know that the soul is part and the jiva, the atman, the individual soul, is part and parcel of the supreme soul, God, Bhagavan, right? And God is a person, but so in that sense, it makes sense that every soul would also be a person because it's part of a person. But how does that compare with souls and animal bodies, insect bodies, tree bodies? They're all people in there?
Yeah. Yeah. They're in a state of forgetfulness, and there's 8,400,000 species, and they go up. They take the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one. And when you can't understand God unless you get a human body. Then you can understand. But not everyone wants to understand. They want to just do what animals do: eat, sleep, mate, and defend. So they're no better than animals leading an animal life. But if you take advantage of this and you try to understand and go to authorized sources, go to good sources, ask questions, and then try it. It works. That's the thing I love about this, Bhakti Yoga, and this. It works. It's the science of self-realization. You do it, it works. And then the science of God realization is even better. And it works. So it's stunning. You need faith for about 2 weeks. If you start doing this Bhakti Yoga process, chanting, hearing, and etc., offering your food, you only need faith for about 2 weeks, because then you start seeing the results and you go, this works. It's really amazing. So many of my God brothers and God sisters, they just have these amazing realizations. And I'll be chanting and I'm grinning from ear to ear and I can't stop. I don't know why. I'm just chanting and I'm smiling and feeling happy and raising my arms, and it's because that's what it is. That's what it is. Ananda. You should know a thing or two about that.
Yes.
Priceless. It's priceless. It's good when Krishna's name and Krishna are the same. So I'm smiling because he's there.
Yeah, that part of our theology, that the name and God himself being the same, it makes sense to me, like very kind of easily in a conceptual way, but to fully accept that in my heart is like crazy. I'm nowhere near at that point, I think.
It's inconceivable.
Okay, I'm glad you agree.
Yeah. Okay, so the living entity in the body of a dog or a cat or an ant is the same quality as in the human being. And guess what? The higher self is there too. So God is in the heart of every. You can go on Japa Walk, and any creature you see, any snail that's crawling on the ground, or any butterfly, just meditate on the fact that the higher self is in their heart. Paramatma is in there. So you see two lights, one big one, one small one in their heart. That kind of meditation is fun, and it's real. And just picture it. Just think about it. Any stranger I pass, God is in their heart. How can I not be nice to them?
So the big light is God, the small light is the jiva?
Yeah.
The soul? The living entity, I mean. So I was going to ask you how we can know the soul, and it seems you already answered that question by engaging in Bhakti Yoga, which has been called the science of self-realization and God realization. Now, as for me personally, I'm fine with that as a label, but I know a lot of people, they hear the word science and they think microscopes, telescopes. So what are some of the nuts and bolts that you think make it a science, make it repeatable, let's say?
Well, if you do the process, it works. Okay, you have, let's say you're chanting, and you're hearing scripture, and then the next time something goes wrong and it's about to be an argument, and then you don't get into the argument because you realize that this is just something happening in my chitta. There's some dvesha vrittis, some reject repulsive waves. There's raga and dvesha. Raga means I want, and dvesha means I don't want. And so you're having some of these dvesha vrittis, these waves that are, oh, I don't like this, I don't want this, You see that is happening in the mind, and you don't get into it. Or you see somebody else is having this problem, and they're pointing at you, but you're not doing anything to them. It's in their mind. So you don't hold it against them. They're going through what they're going through. And you just, So, and how did I get here? How did I get to this kind of a realization? It must be from chanting my rounds.
And this realization you're referring to, which I think you and I both have to some degrees, would that be called buddhi?
Buddhi.
Buddhi.
Okay, so now we're talking about physics of the subtle body. Okay, the subtle body has three main functions: manas, buddhi, and ahankar. Now, buddhi is the intelligence. They're very different. And I read about this in my books. And so manas is the level of mind that forms concepts, makes connections, puts together plans. It accepts something and then it rejects it. On the mental platform, the platform of manas, there's no morality. Okay, 1 second it's accepting something as okay, good, and then the next minute, wait a minute, then this happens, and then, no, and it's fickle. This level of the mind is fickle, manas. You'll be talking to somebody, and there's a pop-up in your head that says, hey, you remember that you went there one time with so-and-so? That's manas working, okay? But so what you need is intelligence that can make moral and ethical judgments. That's what you need, because you're going to be responsible for your actions, so you have to choose your actions wisely. Choose after discernment. It's the buddhi that can think. If A is B and B is C, that means A is C. If doing this leads to realization, then it must be good. If doing that leads to addiction, then that must be no good. So it can discern what is right and what is wrong, and it needs to be cultivated. But guess what? Nowadays, the word judgment is not a good thing. The word discrimination is not a good thing. And guess what? Those are two functions of the intelligence. In other words, we're discouraged from using our intelligence. Why you do? Don't do. Just do what we're doing.
Yeah, I had a close encounter with this recently. I had to sign something from my online English teaching company, and it said it doesn't really apply to me. It's for their community forums, which I never go on, but it said absolute zero tolerance policy for discrimination. I said, okay, I guess we can't be intelligent in our writing anymore. So is buddhi, is that what you would call character?
It's helpful, but my understanding of character is when I control my mind and body, and buddhi is a mechanism for that. You have to have buddhi in order to control your mind and your body. Just like here you are, you're in yoga class, and your mind goes, oh, I'm thirsty. She's keeping us in downward dog so long. I mean, like, this is just too much. So I'm thirsty. Your mind wants you to stop the asana and pick up your plastic bottle and drink. Okay, the Atma within, using the intelligence. Hey, wait a minute, we're not doing it. Get over here and I'm trying to do downward dog. Okay, just be quiet for a minute. So that's discrimination. That's not what we're supposed to be doing right now. Okay. Another thing that I've noticed in yoga classes is a student will come and they'll do something another teacher taught them. When I'm telling them to do it like this, they're not trying what I'm saying. They're doing what the other teacher taught them. And there's no intelligence thinking, I'm not going to learn anything. Why am I here? You know? So that's sort of discrimination. Oh, we're in this class, let's do this and see how it works. Or maybe the teacher might be put off and not like me if I don't do what they're saying. You know, they don't think like that. They just, yeah. So intelligence is useful. It's used by the spirit to control his own mind and body. That's character.
So it seems like Buddhi and Atman, somewhere in between those two is character. Am I right about that? Or
Buddhi is something that Atman uses. Okay, but the ahankara, the false ego, it can cause problems because it can interrupt the buddhi, even. It can interrupt the intelligence. False ego that identifies with a tribal group or identifies with a nationalism or, false ego bodily identification, it will stop, interdict the buddhi from doing its job. So that false ego has to be dealt with.
it seems like false ego causes more problems than it solves, but it's all like, but at the same time, there must be, a very critical reason it's there, which I think is to protect the self, right?
Oh, false ego is it's the knot that ties us to matter. Ego is identity. False ego is misidentifying. Real ego is I'm the servant. Service is my nature. Either I'm going to serve those masters who are never satisfied and never give me a day off, or I'm going to serve a really sweet master who just loves me to bits. That's Krishna. He knows, he feels worse about our suffering than we do. That's why he keeps coming after us. Yeah. So this, when that service attitude is taken away from serving the physical senses, and it's turned towards serving the higher self. And I'm not my higher self, and I will never become my higher self. The higher self is my best friend. And we have an eternal loving relationship. That's the whole.
So higher self, as you're using it now, means Paramatma, right?
Yeah, it means the Supreme Lord.
Okay. So I'm still really curious which Sanskrit word we would use to describe character, in the sense that, having even the highest intelligence and realized wisdom would still just be a part of our character, right? Character seems to be something a bit greater than just buddhi. But it's not pure Atman, right? Because character is something we cultivate and improve, but the Atman is perfect, right?
Perhaps what you're thinking of is expression, proper self-expression. Because what is the point of being a self if you don't express it? Right?
So we have the soul in the center of everything, right? And I'm especially curious what is kind of what is just outside the soul but just inside the subtle body, meaning is this a what's that word, osmosis? What's the osmosis like between these two aspects here?
The spirit and the subtle body.
Yeah.
Well, the spirit is pure, but it's covered by a subtle body. Now the thing is that Patanjali's Yoga Sutra says yoga is to stop the modifications or waves in the mind. Actually, Kapila Dev's a little bit more harsh. Kapila Dev says that the subtle body needs to be cut off with the sword of detachment and knowledge. Anudhyasana. Okay? So he says that ultimately that subtle body is cut off. Now, in other places I've heard that it said the subtle body is dissolved. But in any case, it is discarded, okay? Because we don't need it. We don't need that subtle body. That subtle body is only required for you to enter into the atmosphere of a globe within the material world. And in different globes, the subtle body is different kind of fine substance so that you can live there for a short period of time. But I compare the subtle body to software to access the hardware of the physical body. So the chitta is the software, and the body is the hardware, and the Atma is the user. Atma is the user who touches the. Now, if software gets infected, you've seen this, that the software will act by itself. It'll turn the machine on and turn it off, and it will do this and do with that, and you can't do anything about it. It's acting all by itself. That's tamaguna. That's the mode of ignorance. It's when the Atma has he can't do anything about it. That's when it's really infected. So these modes of material nature, different levels of infection. And in the mode of goodness, it's very, very light covering, very light contamination. So that's when you can actually see. But it's up to you. You have, as an individual spirit, Atma, self, you have consent. Your consent is the most important thing. Yes or no? So in the end of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I've told you everything. Now think about this carefully and then do what you wish to do. He didn't order him, tell him you're going to go to hell if you don't do everything I have ordered you. You know, this isn't the way it works. God respects our right of consent. Anybody else who doesn't, you know, God respects our right of consent. It's up to us.
Yeah, that reminds me of what you said earlier, which was what evil is trying to take away someone else's choice, to impose something on them, or to instead of letting them choose, we try and choose for them, and especially it can happen wickedly. I'm curious what the connection is between the three modes of material nature and the three aspects of the subtle body. Are they all interplaying in different ways, or is it more of a discrete thing where like buddhi is sattva guna, ahankara tamaguna, manas rajaguna? Is that?
Buddhi switches on. It's the light switch that goes on in goodness, in the sattva guna. So in goodness, the buddhi turns on. Yeah. Then but even in the mode of goodness, one can be conditioned to happiness. This is stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. So until you meet a pure devotee and then you understand that you have a relationship with the Supreme Lord, that false ego can still be there. To be in the mode of goodness and have false ego. But the modes work on the whole cell body, not one at a time.
Right. That makes more sense. Yeah.
A story about one of my students. So I rarely talk about yama and niyama or anything like that in my yoga classes because they came to exercise, so that's what I taught. But this one was more interested, and I talked to her about vegetarianism and told her how it makes the mind clearer. And so she tried it, and she told me that after 40 days, my perception was so different. I saw everything differently in 40 days. See, it works. Science.
I want to continue with an analogy used about rope. So the ahankara, the false ego, is like tying a knot out of the rope.
Yeah.
And it seems like, I like this analogy because I think you can explain all three aspects with it. So the buddhi will tell us how to untie the knot, and then the manas is saying, oh, here's more rope. Play with all the rope.
Well, you just don't have enough rope. That's why you're not happy. Just a little more. Just a little more. Just what?
Get a new kind of rope. This nylon rope.
Actually, the manas, the aura, not every thought in the mind is true, okay? And not every thought in your mind is yours. You get that? Especially with intoxication, that the other living entities who are nearby, they're all around us. You can actually hear them. And some of them are really nasty. And they tell you, certain people kill themselves because the spirits nearby are egging them on to do that, making them think that they're the ones thinking that. It's pretty heavy. It's something that needs to be understood. So,
yeah,
saying about the gunas, about the rope, this sounds to me like some Buddhas nearby egging you on. Right.
Excellent. Great. I hope so. Yeah, this kind of discourse we're doing now, trying to hash out the details and the map for the realized knowledge that I guess we've already accepted. I think this is exactly what Prabhupada would call real philosophy, right? As opposed to mundane speculation where we just kind of, like, for example, with what you were just talking about, like schizophrenia would be like the classical medical term for someone who hears a voice and then they kill themselves,
or kill someone else.
Yeah.
Something really crazy. Yeah, and this kind of thing should be understood, but it's not talked about.
Right. So I think the problem with everything I've learned, and most of what I've learned in psychology, especially as a major in it, is we have these little diseases, and we know which part of the brain it affects, and we can put in a little drug to reduce the symptoms, but we have no concept of the outer system in which it's a part. So, and yeah, if instead we see it as, okay, there's three modes that are happening all the time across every dimension, and then also the three aspects of the subtle body, now we can start to see, okay, maybe that voice in his head is coming from this particular place, and then, I don't know, work with it like that.
Well, I'm studying a book called The Spirit's Book, which is a really old book. It's by Alan Kardec. And I got this 30 years ago, and I've been studying it, and it seems to explain what I understand when I'm dealing with guidance, spirits, dealing with my own mind. Because it talks about 10 grades of spirits, and this is what he's treated it like science, where he would explore with mediums. He had like 1,000 questions. This was back in the 1850s when they had seances in France, when they would sit around the table and then they would call the spirit, and the spirit would come in, and so he documented all of this, documented his questions and what the spirit said through the medium. And he had 10 different mediums, and then he collated, okay, she's saying the same thing as she's saying. You know, they don't even know each other, but the same thing. So then he put it together and he made some deductions, about, so it looks like that there's a evil spirit, and then there's neutral spirits, and then there's mischievous spirits, and then there's higher spirits, and he would describe them and their characteristics. And it sounded to me like the modes of nature. It sounded like the evil spirits are really, really covered with a weapons grade thickness of, Tamaguna. And then the upper spirits, they're in the mode of goodness. And then he even acknowledged that there are spirits who don't have any covenant. It's very fascinating that he is discovering through exploration and experimenting psychologically with others that the Vedic version is being confirmed. So the ascending process of knowledge is meeting the descending process of knowledge, and it's fascinating, and I'm just really trying to explain it. So yeah, you have spirits in the manas. They interact in there, and you can hear them. But if you hear something that is wrong or bad, like it says something nasty that you should do to this other person, it makes a suggestion, do that to them. Throw it out. Reject it. Push it away. Don't let it reside there. Because if it stays, it will dig in. This is very important. You have to do your own mind. Clean it up.
One thing I've noticed and I've played around with a lot is the timbre and like the sound quality aspects of the voice that's happening in my head, which, as you've said, a lot of times it's not even our own thoughts. It's not even our own voices. I'll hear maybe a nagging voice to do chores. That's from Mama, right? And but I sometimes notice this like really powerful, inspiring, like commanding kind of voice that gives me the chills, and it really works, really motivates me. And so sometimes I try to, mentally, of course, try to like seed maybe to get the voice to kind of come back more, or like
just invite it. But here's the thing. You ask Krishna for his advice, he'll give it to you. That's what Arjuna had to do. I'm a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. Remember? And Krishna stopped talking, casual talk, and then he got on. So if you want advice, ask him. Go to Mangalarti and say, thank you for everything, and please give me your good advice today.
And of course, a great friend, a great master, a great lover will always be thrilled to give it, I think.
And it was funny when I was in the temple, and I would study Bhagavad Gita. I would read the verses, okay, and I would kind of memorize them. And then I'd be doing some activity, some little task or service, and from out of nowhere, that verse would come up. A verse would come up, and I would hear it, and I'd go, yes. And it seemed pertinent to what I was doing. And then so I would hear it, it was kind of a certain vibe. And then I started to get suggestions in that same vibe. And I said, I wonder if that's Krishna telling me something. Because he first spoke in Bhagavad Gita like that. And now I'm hearing a suggestion which is good for me. I wonder if that's him. You know, I would wonder. And now you just ask him, you'll know when it's him.
Yeah, I think he, well, you know, part of this is the mechanics of it, right? Where like like the universal form that he shows Arjun, which is like it's so there's so much death and like there's just like we as jivas we can't handle it. We don't have the ability to like to process this sort of stuff. So even for a pure devotee, like Krishna is probably not going to be, you know, saying giving the full volume of his voice in a very direct way. So he's going to prefer to send us a message through a bird over there or through yeah, I get lots of messages from sounds like that. um I'm curious, what is an aura?
An aura is the subtle body.
So the totality of the subtle body is expressed physically as an aura?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Permeates your gross body. Yeah. And it's in that subtle body that all your karmic impressions are. And there's three kinds of karma, not two, not good and bad karma. It's karma that is in stock, which is like a big warehouse of karma from all past lives. It's waiting. That's sanchit karma. Then there's impressions that I'm creating now in this life that will be acted out later in other lives. That's Vartaman karma. But prarabdha karma, this is fascinating. Prarabdha karma is the karma for this life. It's your destiny for this life. It is your natural tendency in this life, and it is depicted in the horoscope, which is like a blueprint of your process for this life. It shows what's in your toolbox, what kind of facets of your personality are there, you know, shows what your karmic debts are, what kind of challenges you'll meet, shows what your talents are, these karmic credits, things you've done good and it just lands in your lap because you earned it, you know. It's all there. And prarabdha karma, the horoscope is prarabdha karma in a visual, you know. So I found that fascinating. It's just so exact. Nothing is by chance.
Yeah, I agree with that. So when the soul transmigrates, chooses a new body, it will bring some karma with it, right?
Oh, that's not how it works. The
Yeah.
soul body drags the spirit to the next body.
Oh, so the soul is always trying to go back home, right?
Well, the soul is not. He doesn't know about that. He hasn't woken up yet. He wanted to try to be the controller, the enjoyer, and so on. And he's going from one body to the next, to the next. And if you read 6th canto, chapter 1, the Yamadutas are talking to the Vishnu Dutas, and they explain precisely how the subtle body drags the Atma from one body to another, to another, to another. This is, they're talking about Ajamil. So the 6th canto, chapter 1, gotta check it out. It's really, really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a snapshot summary of it you can provide us with?
Basically, it says that the urges in the subtle body just are endless, and they push the living entity to do this, to do that, to do that. And so I'd like to point out that if I'm not my mind, the urges of my mind are not my urges. If I'm a spirit and my mind has some urges, I'm not my mind. So it's up to me to decide whether we're going to do that or not, you know? So the urges of my mind are not my urges. The urges of my body are not my urges. Yeah? But those urges never, they'll calm down if you don't do anything about it. But have you ever noticed that if you have an itch and you scratch it, it itches more? Have you noticed?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So, but if you don't itch it, you don't scratch it, it won't itch. It goes away. That's how urges are. You have to think, what is my duty? Um, is this in laws of nature? Is this my duty? Or is this beyond my duty in this life, depending on my situation? You can't transgress that. Otherwise, you get trauma. Yeah.
One thing I really want to help others with is ahankara, which I've been really good at detaching from, but I also don't know how to teach it to others. I feel like for me, it's been a long process of many years. Long before I even read the Bhagavad Gita, I was doing shadow work and lots of stuff to get rid of my ego, which I knew from a young age, like I really didn't want to be I didn't want that thing, you know, messing around with me. So I'm just wondering if you have any practical, even exercises or something we can use to either to witness, like when we're caught in false ego, and perhaps how we can limit that or detach from it more.
Well, okay. Bhagavad Gita, 13th chapter, verses 8 through 12, Krishna talks about real knowledge. Um, and actually, it describes excellent character. It talks about humility and this really nice long purport. But false ego, I mean, false ego means that I'm proud of myself. I think I'm my body, my mind, and my nation, and I'm proud. And all this proud. No, don't be proud. It ain't gonna last, okay? it's temporary. Don't make your happiness dependent on something you can lose. Yeah? So I recommend this 13th chapter, verses 8 through 12, as real knowledge. And that will help you overcome false ego. So have a look at that.
The illumination to get rid of the darkness, basically, right?
Yep, not this body. Even if I was king, I could lose it. That poem by Percy Shelley about Ozymandias. Those two feet, and the it's about a statue of a king, and the monument is being torn down. Behold, I am Ozymandias. Be afraid of me, and it's all gone. It's nothing but desert around it. Whatever he had is gone. He's gone. So that very really tears it right off the bush. As far as no matter what you get, he's like, you're king of the whole world.
Yeah, that's true. It's a very sobering fact, but it's a fact nonetheless.
Yeah.
So are you working on a book about the subtle body now?
Yeah. I'm working on a book about spirits in the material world, is what it's really about, and about disembodied beings, and about the subtle body, and about what we're discussing, really. The self is different from the body and mind. And putting together Alan Kardec's work with the mediums and the guardian spirits, guides, and so on, the information that he got and how it's confirmed. A lot of it is confirmed. So I put it together so we can learn more about disembodied beings. Yeah, because this is not talked about. Because they don't have any information really. They're not bringing it up. But I've always been interested in this sort of thing.
It seems like this has been talked about a lot in Christianity, right? Like exorcisms, for example. Are those concerning disembodied beings that are, entering in someone else's body? That's what it seems like.
The aura, but I don't know what they're doing as far as the exorcism is concerned. There are mantras that are chanted. You can protect yourself. There's a Nishina mantra. Hare Krishna mantra will protect you. Even just saying Govinda, Govinda, that'll protect you, from anything like that. But also, you can't walk on the wild side and expect to come back, Don't go walking on the wild side taking something you're not supposed to take. And the sad thing is that teenagers get into this kind of stuff from their friends. Their friends offer it to them, so-called friends, not real friends. And it's sad because
peers.
There's addiction and all kinds of troubles happen. So this is not good.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's a serious loss of culture happening all around the world, I think.
Well, this is the karmic shift. The Kali Yuga is like this. Now, for a while, it was like that, and now it's going like this, at least for a while. So there's this big karmic shift, and astrologically, one thing about the United States, Pluto travels around in an orbit for 244 years. Now that's how old the United States is. So the Pluto is come back to where it was before. Pluto is the Lord of Death.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's this huge metamorphosis that's happening right now. Okay, and it could be that it will split into different countries, and part of what was the USA will maintain the Constitution and parts will not. They'll be run by others. It could be. That could be the transformation. I'm not sure. But there is a transformation happening. And you can look on my website. I have a blog piece that I wrote called Clash of the Titans. And it talks about some transits that are happening right now and how long they last and what they're like. Big shift, seismic shift. Just have to let it happen because it's karma. That means that it's supposed to happen. Different generations have different things that they deal with. Okay? And we just have to go with it and make the most of it. Turn it around, offer it up to the Supreme. Go through it.
Amen. So I'm not sure if I have any other questions. Is there anything else you'd want to talk about? Any questions? Anything?
No, I think I covered. If you want to hear more from me, just look at my books.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you for your time. Shravaniya, Mataji, Hare Krishna. Hope to see you soon, and let's stay strong in these times, right? Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.